There we go, okay. On the board meeting to order of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District at 7:00 p.m. on March 17th, 2026. The roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Bloom?
Here.
Director Jones? Director Solano?
Rob, can you hear us?
Director Solano?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Here.
And Director Crowley?
Present. Okay, so let's please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I am going to open public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
So we don't have any public comment, but I do want to just make a note that the board has received a formal written correspondence for the record from Charles and Dana Carmel regarding emergency vehicle siren noise on Alameda de las Cuevas. And that correspondence is in your board packet on page 376 and 377.
In your, in Atherton.
Well,
So it's-
Atherton and the county all
Yeah,
received
the
it.
county, yeah. Okay. Oh,
And then no public.
What's up?
welcome, Robert Jones. Come on in.
George has been involved.
No, we started, we're just closing public comment for items not on the agenda. So you're just
Sure.
for the voting report.
Oh, cool.
Mark.
He's fashionable.
Thank you, directors, members of the public, and our staff that are here in person or online watching. Thank you. I'm happy to share with you the March Fire Chief's report. I will start with just acknowledging we have a interim board clerk tonight with Francine here. So as we are all going through this process together, it seems like we missed something or forget something, just gently remind us and we'll make sure everything goes well tonight. I will start with the facilities update. You have in your pack just John Hitchcock's monthly report. There's really nothing of significance in here to report on. A couple of the items are highlighted in there. I will share with you, we do have a firefighter recruitment that is going in process right now. It's very similar to our last firefighter recruitment in terms of outreach and process. I think the one thing that is different is we limited applications to 500, and so we reached that limit. We opened the recruitment on March 1st, and when did we hit the 500 mark? Last week. So about halfway through it, we hit the 500 applications. So the purpose for that is the process would just end up being really long and cumbersome and expensive if we didn't like that. So the next step is the 500 applicants, assuming they meet all the criteria, will go through video interviews that are recorded. They're pretty short. And we actually have members of the department will kind of do a pre-screening interview process. The top, I believe 70 candidates will move forward to in-person interviews. And the top, I haven't determined the number of candidates will come to CV for chiefs. So this recruitment is starting now for an academy that will start probably 11 months from next January of 2027. Right now we have 4 vacancies. We'll see if we have more in the time, but that's just the amount of time it takes for the process. I also wanted to share with you and have shared via email that we also have a clerk recruitment that's now open. We opened it yesterday. I know we already have 5 applicants, and we're going to have it open for 2 weeks. And also, and Director Crowley may want to comment now. Yeah, we're planning on having an external panel do the initial evaluation and then sending hopefully 3 qualified candidates for myself, Francine, and hopefully a participant.
Yeah, so thanks, Chief. So I received an email from Director Bernstein about the involvement of the board or a board member, since the clerk is actually
an officer of the board as the board clerk, even though that person is hired by the district. And so, this was pretty short notice, so what I was thinking was that we would have someone from our board, from the HR committee, basically that's Director Bloom, who's the chair of the HR committee, and me, be a part of the interviewing panel. So that's one option. The other option is to just leave it as it is and have the chief and Christine, who else, I guess y'all would be on the panel, the two of y'all.
Just the two of us. it's
Yeah,
ten
or-
of us, like-
Or, have the whole board be involved, which is what I think Director Bernstein was thinking might be a good way of doing it. But I don't know, Chuck, do you wanna, without discussing, any of the substance, it's not on the agenda, for me, I just think that the good middle ground here would be I put myself on the interview panel so that we have board representation, since this person, whoever this person, new board clerk will be, will kind of do the board's work. So, that's what I would suggest.
That's my recommendation, that, a panel of 8 would be.
Yeah.
But
So, I
having
wanted
a
to
board
just give
member would
the
be-
gamut of the options. Do you want to see?
Well, I'd like to see 5 people on it, and that's 5 board members. I'm a little concerned that this happened once before, but we're institutionalizing a conflict of interest between the executive function of this body and the legislative thing. I think the checks and balances are supposed to exist. And there was a time where the chief's secretary essentially was also the clerk of the board. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think, because just for the sake of clear communications, honest communications, and to be honest with you, I've been on here long enough, there have just been some communications or lack of communications that should not have existed, and now the clerk has a conflict of interest. I'm told that the clerk might not be a full-time position, in which case we could advertise it as a part-time position. But I think since it reports, the clerk of the board function reports to the board and is a board officer, that the board ought to be fully involved in doing that. And we've had kind of an institutional split in the board for the last couple of years, with many 3-2 votes and so forth. And so by doing just having 2 members of the board who are on one side of that faction, I think we're creating a potential problem in the future that this would need to have.
So for the recruitment process, you would like to see all 5 of us on the interview panel?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think that's overkill. To me, this is an administrative position. The person's going to be managed by the chief or by Francine, whichever way the organization structure is done. And so I don't see any need for widespread board. I do think it would be a good idea to have a board representative. President of the board makes sense to me on the panel, and just to watch for the board's interests and the characteristics and personality of the individual for a fit with the board. But I don't think it's necessary from a kind of conflict perspective or governance perspective. And the board's in no position to manage the individual once the individual's hired. So regardless, the person's gonna be an employee of the administrative staff or the chief.
Robert?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm a little, I haven't put the past behind me yet and to try to move towards the future. I think, I don't think all 5 board members are with Gary. I think it's a little overkill. However, I do think, the question become in my mind, whether the clerk of the board has any responsibility to the board other than in name the clerk of the board, whatever that represent. And if there's no administrative function that the board has in terms of hiring or firing someone, I think it really doesn't matter to me whether I'm kind of betwixt with that, because I think there's some issues that's cropped up when I looked at from the email that really need to be resolved or at least answered in my part. But in terms of just having a representative board, I think the board president would be, if there's going to be a vote towards someone, I think the board president should be that represent the rest of the body of the board. So that's my opinion.
Rob?
Well, between, Chuck's concern and of course your concern, Gary, and Robert's input, I could go in either direction on this. He or she would, be our board clerk and would represent us. And I would turn to Nicole for any legal advice relative. Is she, does she fall within the legal or jurisdictional representation of our board? That would be my question to Nicole.
I'm happy to respond. I do want to flag that we're in
Yeah.
the chief's report
Yeah.
section, so this
So, but I'm
probably running afield.
Yeah, and I don't wanna go too far,
Right.
but I really do think that we should resolve the recruitment process, which is the agenda of the chief's report.
So the issue is that historically, the board clerk has not been an employee that has been employed by the board. They've been within the chief's or under the chief's hierarchy, so they do report to the board. They are a board officer formally, and that's how the board designates the board clerk and our board rules. But that individual reports to the chief.
Does that clarify for you, Ron?
Kinda.
Okay.
Is she or is she not?
Is she or is she not what, Director Solano?
Is she a representative of our board? Is she a full-time position for our board?
Historically, the board clerk has not been employed by the board, a representative of the board. Only the board represents the board, so she's not a representative of the board. She's certainly a representative of the agency in the same way that any other employee would be. The board has the authority the board clerk could either be a board member, or the board clerk could be an individual employed by the board, and that board has not taken that action in the past. They've left that position within the chief's or under the chief's hierarchy.
To the
So the
chair,
board clerk, just for clarity, reports to the chief, not to the
That
board.
has been the district's practice, yes.
Yeah, Chuck.
If someone were to do research on clerks in any local government agency, you would learn that in almost every agency, the clerk in fact does report to the legislative body that's involved. We are an exception to that rule. That's not the norm. The fact that we've always done it is just because we are kind of a paramilitary organization where everything reports to the top, and that's just not the normal way a government works. So again, I can't argue with it. It looks like the will of the majority is that we not do that. But in fact, almost every case, but you haven't done any research, so you're speaking,
Yeah, but-
you're speaking out of
But you
ignorance.
haven't either. So I know CSDA members, and I know SDRMA
Okay,
members, but anyway, I don't wanna interrupt.
but you did interrupt me.
Or you,
Um,
through the chair,
you
through the chair.
Well, thank you.
let Chuck
So you got-
finish.
I think you got this quabbling right now, and so if there's nothing relevant in terms of question, then let's move on. If it is, then continue the conversation.
Okay, I will move on then. I'm just saying that that's not the way that it's normally done, so we are an exception to what is normally done in every agency that surrounds us. So I'll leave it at that.
So, I don't necessarily agree, I don't have all the data, and I don't think anyone here has all the data, but I know from other special district boards that I'm on and other special district boards that I'm familiar with, that's not the case, that doesn't mean that there aren't. So I'm gonna go with what the chief also recommends, which is I will put myself on the interview panel. So it's a 3-person panel for this position. And if we wanna discuss the board
clerk's role on a future agenda item, we can do that. So I'll make the motion to put,
We can't vote on that.
okay, so, but can we, okay, oh, got it. But so if,
I'm sorry.
with the all blood point concept, if everyone's okay, if people are okay with that right now, at least for a temporary solution, I'm happy to be on the interview for the board clerk position.
Wonder, I'm not okay with it, which is obvious, but the fact is you can do whatever
We,
you
well,
want
we
to do.
can't vote on this, so.
I'm just saying to you, you asked if anybody was okay with it, and you wanted to record that I'm not okay with it.
Okay, so that's, so we'll move
I think
on.
we're done with the
Yeah.
conversation.
We'll move on to other items. Chief.
Yeah, on a different note, we're gonna share something on the community engagement unit. I will share some of their activities, but I want to share a very professional video that was put together by Heather Amandeep, and with the assistance of Charles Washington and our video cadre. That was presented just 2 weeks ago at the Santa Barbara Community Risk Reduction Conference. Really well received, and I think it just gives a nice glimpse at some of the great work that's going on behind the scenes. So,
There's no good way to do it.
Community risk reduction looks at the community as a whole and looks at what the fire service can do to help support that. So what can we do to help make sure the community is as safe as possible, reduce our incidents, reduce the impact on our community, our neighbors, our property, and how we can all do that together to make us stronger.
Community risk reduction is a process. It's a process to identify the risks in a community and implement programs or interventions to address those specific risks to eliminate or mitigate them over time.
Our job is more than just responding to a call and treating a patient or dealing with an emergent situation. I think we have a responsibility to do also to try and prevent harm. And we can do that by creating programs that kind of anticipate these predictable events.
The firefighters, the crews, they're the front line. They're the face of the organization. They are the ones interacting with the public each and every day. And so the public sees the firefighters as the community risk reduction people. So having a support role with the community risk reduction team, they can come out and supplement and effectively support everything that the firefighters are doing and really enhance the program and the message we're delivering to the community.
If you want to gain buy-in from firefighters, it's all about communication. It's all about coming into our family, allowing us to get to know you, you actually getting to know us, and us building these bonds so that we can further work together in order to do a better job for our community.
It's really important for somebody who's new to community risk reduction to take the time to get to know the culture of the agency where you're working. If you're new to the fire service, take time to observe, to talk to the people who work there, what's important to them before you step in and start taking on your job.
The programs that have been well received by the community are community events, our station tours, and our school presentations. The firefighters do a great job educating the community in a fun way, and we work hand in hand together. So the community loves that.
One of our most successful programs that we've been able to support is firefighter rehab. That's how I've gotten to know the firefighters, been able to build those relationships, show that we as a team are here to help support what they do. For the community, our classes that we offer, we bring our classes where the people are to help educate them so they can be more prepared. And we've also had great success with all of our CERT team efforts, building up our CERT team, training them really well, showing the firefighters what they can do to help support, and taking them to the next level so that they're engaged and ready to help their community.
I think it's important, first of all, for the fire chief internally to develop a program that has a good mission and vision for where the program should go, and then make sure you populate it with the right people, the people that you know that can connect with the community and deliver the message. And then also, just ask for some kind of internal measurables so you can, measure success, and then get out of the way and let your people do what they're good at.
When you have a team of the online crews and the community risk reduction team members put together, it's like a force multiplier. And you're able to get out to the community and deliver a message that supports the safety of our community that comes from the mission statement of the fire department.
There are a lot of people out there doing community risk reduction in their agencies right now. So if you're wondering about it, just reach out through your network of other fire chiefs. And my guess is they'll be able to show you some really great examples of how community risk reduction is working and the value that can be achieved through that.
The best thing about public trust is we inherited it. It came from the generations before us, and it's on us to further that for the generations after us. Community risk reduction allows us that opportunity to further that public trust, to be better for our community, to do a better job at what we're expected to do, and to be the firefighters our community deserves.
We serve the community in a number of ways, and the community risk reduction team is just an incredible addition to our organization right now, because we have so much involvement in our community, and our community expects that of us.
What each and every one of us want to do every day is make a difference in the world, right? Just knowing that we can come to work and make it a little bit better.
I'm excited for continuing to help our program grow, for continuing to help our community become more prepared, and continuing to support the work that's already happening at Menlo Park Fire.
Nicely done.
It'll be, like I said, when I saw it after it was all done, I'm like, wow, it's really, I need to share this with the board. Because oftentimes I'll read through my list of the things they've done and you don't get to see what that means. Yeah, you saw the firefighter rehab and the hands-only CPR and all these things. The target audience for this was generally fire prevention officers. This is where community risk reduction is a newer term in the fire prevention world. But that's where a lot of what we do with our volunteer groups and CERT and a number of our programs lives. And a lot of fire agencies don't have it yet. So that was kind of the ask from Heather and Amandeep as they were putting this together is, for me, can you share some information with fire chiefs that don't currently have it on how they might be able to get their electeds or their city manager buy into it? And then with some of their messaging was really sharing with fire prevention folks on what success can look like. And that is engaging with your volunteers, creating opportunities for them to, after they're done with CERT, instead of being catch and release, to come and participate in a variety of things. And you saw some of our CERT members there participating in our task force check-ins, doing a number of things. You'll see they were at our Chipino feed. They're there doing firefighter rehab. So it was really just a great way for you to see all the good things that our folks were doing. With that, I will share with you some other things that are going on in our community risk reduction unit. They report they have completed the teen CERT training with a youth group in East Palo Alto that Director Jones was involved in. And there was estimating approximately 25 students finished it. So it's great. It was a many months project. So that was really great.
That was the inaugural session.
I believe so, the first time we've done that, right?
Yes, we still got 3 more months, but they're gonna be moved into communication, radio communication, understanding what that is and how to do windshield assessments. So the first part, as Chief mentioned, they have completed last month.
Really great.
Will they be CERT members with a CERT training?
Yeah.
But this is for a certain age, a younger age group.
These are high school.
Yeah.
High
But
school.
yes, they're qualified CERT members, whether or not they can be DSWs if they're minors, this is a separate question.
18, I think is
But
the
once
cutoff.
they reach the age of majority, they can CERT, be DSWs.
I was under the impression the teen CERT program is different than the regular CERT program.
I don't know.
It's pretty much, they follow the same rule format. They go through the same curriculum coursework. And of course, it's only in high school, they're underage. So the DSWs, they won't be deployed for that kind of work.
Thanks for doing all
Yeah.
that, Robert.
Just a quick comment. There must be a way to work around that DSW issue, because I know the sheriff's office frequently deploys the high school explorer groups out with search and rescue with our other groups. I've been in the field with them. I've been in the field with them hundreds of times, and they're extremely well trained. They have a higher energy level than any of the rest of us. And they're
More
very,
strict.
well, they're very competent at what they do. They take it very seriously. So we should probably look a little more to see how that's being done. And we're not unique in San Mateo County. Marin County has about 125, I think it is, search and rescue high school kids.
Well,
So
on
what
her
was this
graduation
again?
letter
What city was
agreement.
Marin County, but San Mateo Sheriff says too. Yeah, we're just not that big.
Our certain
Marin has
folks
about
also
125 search and
assisting
rescue
the
kids.
firefighter because we had some
They come out like armed.
rescue stuff all last week. That's similar to what you saw up there. They volunteered and helped with our crab peanut feed, which is great. They volunteers also participated in the Task Force 3 mobilization drill last week. And we kicked off our latest CERT Academy just last Thursday. I attended the first meeting. We have 16 people enrolled in the class. They also, as I mentioned, presented a couple different presentations down at the California Fire Prevention Institute Annual Conference. They did an evacuation plans presentation with residents at Serenity Senior Apartments in East Palo Alto, CPR certification class for para educators at Los Alamitos and Juan Trial Schools, and a number of station tours. I won't list them all out. And then also, we're part of the Little League opening day ceremony, and in which case our baton chief Rob Johnson threw out the first pitch. I don't know if he made it to the plate or not, but let's assume he did. And then Engine 5 visited the Girl Power event for youth and teen girls in East Palo Alto, and I know Yael was there for that, which was great. Some other things going on as we move down through my chief's report. I just want to share, though we didn't have data for January and for last month, we do have January and February data there. We got some of the kinks worked out. I will share with you just on one of the tables in here, and it's actually the very first table on page 4, that's the call processing time. We know that is not accurate right now. We're working with I know Aaron met with public safety communications today just to validate that was not accurate. Now we're trying to figure out why it's not looking right. That should look kind of like a little bit more like a bell curve. And we know that they're not getting whatever 60% of their calls out in the first 10 seconds. So I just wanted to point out that that's not accurate, and we're working on fixing it so that information is correct. I would also yes.
While you're at it, just, would you flag also page 11? There's something funky here where the upper chart and the lower chart don't align. So if you look at the two gray lines that are there, for example, they're at the same time point, but they're not aligned on the page. Just telling you from a formatting standpoint, something's funky about that.
Which chart, the right?
I see what you're saying.
Oh, here, these two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's visually that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so that's.
Got it. No.
Sorry to interrupt. I just
No, that's
wanted
fine.
to-
Would like to fix this. Moving on, I don't have anything specific in the new development update. I will say our budget sessions are pretty much complete. Are we going to bring the finance committee next month?
Yes, so we are gonna bring the bid on Article.
Got it. So finance committee will get to set some eyes on the first look at the preliminary budget. Will be taken to the board also in April for the board's first look. Nothing is set in stone, but I just wanted to be.
So Mark, just a quick question.
Director Solano, did you have your hand up?
Yes,
Rob, do you have your hand?
Yes, I have a question about the response times.
Sure.
Yeah, Chief, I see there still isn't a measure that talks about when the call actually is either received by 911 dispatcher or by another entity like the Highway Patrol, and when the communication center actually receives the call. And, that could be quite a bit of time between when the call actually comes in and then when it's actually processed and then, put out as a service call. So that's something that is kind of immeasurable, relative to this data.
Right. And that is on our radar. We were just having, I'm one of the fire chief liaisons to the PSD. We were just talking about that at our last meeting. Trying to figure out where we can measure from when somebody calls in to the primary answering point. That's generally law enforcement, to when it gets to us. We don't know if that's 5 seconds, 5 minutes, and we're trying to figure out if there's ways where we can go CAD to CAD and be able to measure that. So on our radar, and we're looking for a solution for that. I haven't found any fire agency that's able to measure that yet, but I think all of them are interested because it all matters. From the time somebody dials 911 until we get there is the time we want to measure. We're missing that piece where law enforcement has.
Hey, Chief, that would only be the part that if they're calling in and the first responder is county dispatch, right? It wouldn't pick up the part Rob said if they got highway patrol first. I assume we have no way to measure it coming in from another agency
Right.
outside of the county.
Well, that's what we're trying to do also. Like, so if it's in Menlo, it's gonna be Menlo PD, right? That makes it up first. We would like to figure out
Try
how
to
to
get
measure
to it.
that, and
Okay.
we have an annual joint meeting with the police chiefs, and we mentioned that to them, and it's not an issue for them because it doesn't affect them. So we're trying to get them convinced that if they need to fix something, then from their perspective, it doesn't need to fix.
Got it.
Very easy.
Yeah, I wanted to just tail onto that without that point, the definitions that are here of call processing time are inaccurate.
Okay.
Because it says it does measure that. It measures the time comes in with the dispatch, which is not the case, right?
Yeah, it just, we can clarify that. It measures it from the time it comes into fire dispatch.
Yeah. No. I mean, what is fire dispatch?
PSD, right? It's,
Dispatch.
yeah, law enforcement gets the first ring and then it gets the first call. And then it gets transferred fire dispatch,
Well, then
fire
yes.
or EMS call.
I think.
We can't clear.
I think it's not clear in here what is being measured. I thought we weren't able to measure even once it was in the dispatch.
We did.
We only are measuring it from the time that they call us.
We are measuring both. We don't have them combined together here, right? So the first chart that I was pointing out, call processing times, is the measurement of PSC points. From the time they get the call transferred to them from law enforcement to the time they tone us out, that's what that first chart is. So that's, we have it, and we're not in control of that. That's another agency, but it's still important, so we should.
I didn't understand that. I thought that was the time when it came to us here.
This is when the first pickup goes in public safety communications.
Right, so
On the fire
we're trying to measure that gap between that and when it gets
We're-
to us.
We're trying to measure the gap from when law enforcement picks it up to when it comes over to the fire dispatchers. Council meetings,
Wait, quick question for budget session, that bullet, you got Genentech. letter?
Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, and we
Yeah,
talked
it's
about
like
that.
in the finance, so I don't wanna,
I think, are you gonna
I
chat about that
don't,
at all?
yeah, I don't know if you're gonna do, I didn't
nothing.
see it in the
Okay.
report, not that it, maybe it's not that effective, but it's about almost $500,000.
Maybe we can
I can-
mention that.
I can talk about it when we get to the committee reports.
Okay, perfect, thank you, but you did get the letter,
Yes.
thanks, Gary.
At council meetings, I attended the last Atherton Town Council meeting. It was a good portion of the meeting was dedicated to dealing with issues surrounding the Howard element. And then I also attended the East, Director Flynn was there. I was also at the East Palo Alto City Council meeting, Director Jones was there next to me too. There was a lot going on there, some of the stuff you read in the paper. I did not stay for the entire thing, but it was a lively council session. That much I will say. I'm gonna address a couple things now that were asked from our board members. One is an update on the tree removal question related to, some questions that Director Solano had, so we dug in, this came up at our January meeting and Director Solano mentioned that it had happened on the Saturday before, so we were looking for the actual incident. We couldn't find one 3 days on either side of Saturday, but I will share this information. Just in general related to incidents like this. It's pretty common if a tree is down for somebody to call 911 and for dispatch to get it and for them to send fire resources out there to determine if there's any hazards. That could be lines down, that could be somebody trapped under there, who knows what it is. So it's pretty common. It's especially common on windy, rainy days. Half of our calls are trees down in lines. So that is normal. It is also normal, I'm understanding, for if our crews are able to help mitigate the situation, either by dragging the branches off the road or using a chainsaw to cut them up and move them off the road, they will do that to get the streets moving again. They're not trying to take public works job, but trying to just do what's right. That said, it's also my understanding and the expectation from our ops chief that when we are on something like that, that's a public service, that we remain in service and available to respond to emergencies, and that the captain is monitoring the radio for those any calls that might be in the sector. So if they're busy, the firefighter and engineer are working on a tree, and they get a call for somebody not breathing, they're dropping what they're doing and responding to that call. So that's the captain monitoring.
Chief, could I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
They wouldn't get a call though, would they? Because dispatch wouldn't call them knowing they're out on the call, they go to the next unit.
Usually they can make themselves available on scene, which means that they would show a CAD as being available, right? And then at possible, if for some reason you do not show up as available on scene in the system, the fire captain's monitoring the command channel, and fortunately our folks know their streets real well and their sectors well. So if they will hear a call, engine 5 in this case would be like, why is engine 3 going on our call? And they would radio to PSE and say, we're available, we're responding on that medical call. Right, so that's what we expect of our fire captains. The next thing, Director Bernstein asked.
Just Chief, just real quick on the tree thing. I think there's one other scenario too that you didn't mention, which is they come out on the down lines. It's a train wreck of mayhem on the street. They simply work with PD to close the road and they leave.
Yes.
And that was the case on our street about 2 weeks ago. It was 2 poles that came down with the tree. And so lines for about 200 yards were down and they just shut down the street. Fire was on scene very, very short period of time until PG&E took over.
Yeah, we try not to tie up our resources waiting for PG.
Yeah, PD.
That can be for.
Yeah, so the fire units cleared very quickly. PD had the roadblocks until which time PG&E showed up. And so about 5 o'clock in the morning, when I heard all the commotion, PG&E was already on scene with the road closure.
Director Bernstein was in our last meeting, I think, Director, about robots and firefighting. And you had mentioned some things that Tesla was doing as well as Apple. So I did a little research and have some answers for you. Interesting. First, I'll start with Apple. Apple's not really going down the road at the moment of humanoid robots like Tesla is. So it's possible in the future they might, but they are really focusing on some in-home consumer robotics that doesn't look like a person. But you're right. The East Bay Fremont factory is being basically revamped to produce this Optimus humanoid robot.
We need a Tesla.
Tesla. Did I say? What did I say?
Optimus.
Yeah, but that's the name of it. Optimus humanoid robot at the Tesla factory.
Okay. Not the Apple, not the Apple.
No, this is Tesla. And their target production is to produce up to 1 million robots per year, and it is Elon Musk's vision that every home will have a robot. And also longer term, and I don't think there's going to be an application in the short term, they were anticipating that probably in the 10 to 20 year range, there will be robots that can perform some or many of the functions of a firefighter. It probably would not eliminate firefighters altogether, but it would likely be able to augment them. So it is a thing and it is underway, and just watching some of the videos on it, those things are really lifelike and watching what they're doing. So anyway, we will continue to monitor developments. I'm sure once it gets closer, there'll be a lot of opportunities in the fire service to, especially for some of our riskier operations, to have humanoid robots complete those tasks. There are robots that are doing it right now. Usually they're wheeled and operated remotely, kind of thing like that. But the day will come when that may be a viable option. It's just, from my research, is a decade or two out. Yes, sir.
There's an announcement about 2 weeks ago, I think, and to send it to you, and I forgot, but there's an Italian company that has created a hose vehicle, robotic hose vehicle, and they're selling them now in Europe. Relatively small, they look like little tanks basically that have a hose, and they're testing the firefighting using those things so they can get in close and things like that.
Los Angeles City has one of those.
Yeah,
Check with their fire.
Los Angeles bought one, I think there's one other American city that bought one as well. But I think we should be aware of them, and we're talking about.
Chat with their chief, I'll see him next month.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask him about that and also ask him about his Rosenbauer that he bought. But that's why, as a follow-up to that thing is, but I'll see Chief Moore next month at a meeting, so I'll get some feedback and share that. Some other items on here, I just wanted to share what a wonderful event. I was invited to this along with Director Crawley last Thursday. It was the first annual Menlo Atherton Community Ramadan celebration. It's the Muslim community coming together over at the Ariaga Center over at Burgess Park. What an uplifting ceremony. For those that don't know, Ramadan is 30 days of fasting from sunrise to sunset, and in the last week or 10 days, they start having these iftar celebrations where you basically come in and break the fast with your Muslim friends and neighbors. And it was just really wonderful how they explained it, how they explained a lot of the commonalities between all of us, especially in light of everything that's going on in this country right now. Just really a really beautiful, wonderful celebration. So one of those things where sometimes you get a dinner and you're like, oh, what's this gonna be like? It was so glad I went. It was
And the
really
food was
wonderful.
great.
The food was spectacular too. Also, we had that wonderful Chipino feed, over 300 people attended, lots of volunteers. I have no idea what the results were of their fundraiser. I'll share it with you once we get that. We had our quarterly retirees lunch, which they always appreciate. And those are my outstanding staff reports. And hopefully, dealing with these two items here, with the robotics and also the tree removal work for the board, and hopefully I can, rather than adding them to as future staff reports, I can just address them quickly like that. Some of these are going to be a little bit more in depth, and we probably need them on there. That is my chief's report.
Any public comments online? Thank you so much. We'll move on to. We have public comment number. Okay. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Bloom and seconded by Director Jones. Any discussion? Any public comment? Okay, roll call please.
Director Bloom for Director Bernstein,
I'm being slow to answer, I'm just checking. Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
and Director Crowley.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously. And now we're on to the regular agenda, item 4, which is to accept the annual comprehensive financial report and related supplemental report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Or 19, or,
It is a-
oh no, where is
and
it?
our auditor.
Yes, that was a good report, by the way. A long report.
Yeah, I can start it. I'm just gonna give a little background. So this item actually has been reviewed in this class as well in the finance, committee meeting. So this is really mostly about audit results. So again, just to give a little bit of a background, we have 3 engagements with our current auditor. One is, the annual external financial audit, which we actually completed last December of 2025. We also released annual comprehensive financial report in the same month. The second one is the single audit. The single audit is required for non-federal entities who expend more than $750,000 of federal funds for a given fiscal year. So a report was also issued last February with an modified opinion as well. And then lastly, they also did some agreed upon procedures with regard to the calculation of our data appropriation limit. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan, who's going to present audit results for fiscal year 24-25, as well as the governance letter for matters that are required to be communicated to the board as part of your oversight responsibility for financial reporting matters. I am also gonna share my screen for the short slide deck. But if you prefer, the presentation actually starts on page 245.
Welcome, Nathan.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon, thank you, everyone. Hello, but you guys have my slides in the packet. Excuse me. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, my name is Nathan Edelman with Pine Bailey. I am the independent external auditor. You can jump to the next slide, please. And these are the same slides I met a couple weeks ago, was it? With
2 weeks
the
ago.
audit committee or finance committee with directors Bloom, directors Jones. It's kind of we'll move into this in a little more detail. I'll try to keep it, I guess, a little more high level. But if there's anything that you'd like me to go into, I'm more than happy to talk for a while about accounting. These are the bottom line audit results, which really is that the District 1 received what's called an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. That's what you want. That's the good one. There were on internal control over financial reporting. We identified no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses for compliance, including, which is really the federal single audit. There were no instances of non-compliance. And for the GAN, the agreed upon procedures for that GAN appropriations limit, again, we noted no exceptions. So in practical terms, these results indicate that really financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects, which is kind of, I guess I'd say the good opinion that is the expected opinion from the auditor. Next slide, please. So what did we audit, which is, these things here. Our audit scope covered the district's fiscal year 2025 financial statements. So it's that July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025 financial statements, otherwise known as the ACFR. And it's, we go in and as auditors, it is verify cash, payables, revenues, but it is an after the fact affirmation to verify that the financial information really that was previously presented to you, the financial information is complete and accurate, and it is useful information for folks to make decisions. We looked at, we evaluate internal controls relevant to financial reporting. It's part of planning the audit, part of executing the audit. We perform procedures related to federal grant compliance. So that's not so much the debits and credits, but it's what is the district doing with the restricted federal grants, which for you folks, it's those the FEMA disaster recovery grants, and it's, you think of it as selecting samples from those, and really the question is the district using these FEMA grants for things that are allowable, since they are very, very narrow in what is allowable, which leads me to the next slide, please, which is our role. I kind of look at three high-level parties that are involved here. You got the board who oversees financial reporting, they oversee and receive the results of the audit. Management's responsibilities are to actually reconcile the accounts, they need to support the audit. We rely on them to give us documentation, to answer questions, they have to send out confirmations. And our role as auditors is to get that information, review the information, we ask questions, and then really we are reporters, and at the end of the day, through the audit opinion, and the auditor is just reporting back to you folks, reporting back to the board, the results of the audit. So in other words, management prepares, the auditor tests, and the board oversees this whole process. Next slide, please. And without going into all of these things, there are certain other things that the audit standard require to be communicated above and beyond what's in the actual audit report. And good news, or maybe sometimes no news is good news, but in short, there were no other matters arising that are required to be reported. And those things are just summarized on here. If there were delays with the audit, if management was less than forthcoming, there are a number of things that we would be required to report, and no such matters arose. In fact, everybody that we work with on the finance side, which is kind of a smaller entity, so everybody is Elaine and Ms. Owen Long, who does all the accounting. They're very cooperative and responsive to everything that we need from the audit. In the last slide, which is just one thing I wanted to highlight, there is a basic set of accounting rules that apply to all these governments set up by GASB. Balance sheet, income statement, just the basic financial statements, and then many governments, including the fire district, including Menlo Fire, produce what's called a full disclosure act, for an annual comprehensive financial report, and takes the basic, let's say, minimum financial reporting requirements, and then puts on a lot of other stuff to enhance transparency and accountability. And it is reviewed by a special review committee, and the auditor asks questions to ensure that the information is correct, but the special review committee looks at to ensure that all of this bonus information that is required to receive an award is actually there. And the district has received the award for many years, including the 2024. So I just wanted to highlight that it is a good thing, I think, for the district. So with that, I think the last slide just says thank you. So with that, I'll turn it over to the directors. I'm happy to answer any questions best I can.
I have just a quick question before, and this is really quick. So for the GFOA certificate of excellence, that is also available for cities to be able to get.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So every government agency.
Every government is eligible to
governance
submit.
board.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep. Many cities do.
okay, great. I'll open it up to comment. Chuck. Or Ron, I don't know, Ron, you had your hand up. Or Gary.
I'll just comment on behalf of the finance committee. Robert can jump in that, we spent considerably more time on this, and there were no communications that raised any concerns or any shortness of breath or anything else caused by what we saw. So the report tonight was consistent with the review that we did in committee.
Robert.
No, I think Gary
Thank you.
laid it down pretty.
I'd like to ask about 4 areas, and it's not because I think there's a problem at all. In fact, in one area, I think there's a major improvement, but I'm just curious to understand your work. Let me ask about the repayments or the likelihood of reimbursements from both the state and federal governments. Did you have any concern about us performing services on credit that might not be honored by government agencies?
Good question. Really there's no answer to that within the report. We look at what has been set up as, I'll call them receivables, which would be that the district is expecting reimbursements. And we would want to make sure that those receivables are fairly valued. If there are concerns about will grants actually be repaid in some future year, nothing about that within the audit. Honestly, probably defer to finance staff if they have more information about specific grants, but nothing within the audit that would directly answer that.
So those receivables though are valued at what we've submitted, right? Not there's been no response necessarily that the government has accepted those or anything of that sort.
For the grant receivables to, I'll say, survive the audit, they have to comply with the accounting rules, and so there has to be a formal grant agreement that's been fully executed, fully signed. And then typically, the district has to do something eligible before they can, oftentimes they submit reimbursement requests. And so we would want to make sure that all of those things, or we would have made sure that all of those things have actually happened.
Let me ask you about an entirely different issue. We had an issue, perhaps it's been now 3 years or something, 2 years, where we'd made a mistake on the benefits that we were providing to our employees. And there was a benefit that we had promised them, but actually not purchased on their behalf. And we worked out an arrangement to try to make them whole and get them to accept it. Did you audit that at all or look at that, or are you reassured that we have that there's no future risk to us for that?
Director Bursi, I can actually speak on that. So they did. So that's regarding with the PRSA liability, Nathan, if you remember, like 3 years ago. That's unrecorded liability that we adjusted on the books. So essentially they did. So they did perform some audits, like search for unrecorded liabilities, and they found out that particular liability wasn't recorded in the books. I think that was like 3 or 4 years ago. So short answer, yes, they are performing substantial audit procedures, things like that, and that was actually already resolved, I think, 3 years ago as well.
I don't think it was fully resolved, because I asked this question about a year ago and they hadn't all been resolved, and I don't know if they're still sitting there, if it's.
Yeah, there was, I think, only one person left that we couldn't reach out to, and we tried all means, and it was a very de minimis amount, it was less than $100. And so we were able to write that one off and resolve it. So there's no more risk with the PRSA, the post-retirement survivor allowance.
Okay, and just, is that something that you would look at or audit?
Yeah, they did look into it at the first year, and then on the succeeding years, they also verify, what the current claims are, what has been disbursed, and what's the remaining balance for that liability.
And so there's no significant risk, if any. Okay, thank you. And then I had one more question. And again, this is a positive from my standpoint, but I just want to, I don't know, I'm trying to understand the extent of the audit. Do you look through our investment portfolio at all to see if it complies with whatever constraints we put on it and things like that?
Oh, I have to pull up, I don't remember what the portfolio looks like. All these local governments have to comply with California government code about investments, and many of them involve investments, I'll call them investments, but they're a state late, which is like a governmental pool or a county pool. And so we would look to ensure that those comply with government code. And if the district had, I'll say fancy investments and Tesla, depending on robots and lots of things, we would have those flagged as audit findings if that was the case. But we're not looking at there would not be findings about investments should be somewhere else or they could be somewhere else, and either be kind of, if there's something out of compliance with government code, that's something that would.
So you'll recall at the last meeting that I reported that our finance managers had provided us the certification that they met our investment policy. If for some reason they were out of our investment policy, that would become something for the audit and something that would get flagged, but we're in compliance with it. And they routinely do that through a computer. Basically, the investment policy is loaded into a computer system. Our investments are continually, every time they make an investment, they make sure that we don't go out of compliance with the various percentages and everything else. So that's an automated process provided by an investment firm that specializes in government agencies and keeps us California compliant.
So the certification we received was from that agent,
From that agency, if they were to flag an issue or an out of compliance issue, that would be an audit concern.
I'm just trying to understand, let's say that happened, how would that get to the auditor? And let me say, by the way, I'm very happy with our returns and what we're doing as improvements and so forth, so this is negative. I just like to know what the reach of the audit is.
Oh, okay, so one thing, we ask, if the district of management is aware of non-compliance, please tell us, so we would be asking. On June 30 of every year, the audit is as of June 30th, 2025 in this case. And there is, for example, if I'm looking at page 42, there's a table that lays out the investment portfolio, and it has ratings, it has types of investments, it has treasury obligations and certificates of deposit. And so we are looking at that table, and that's where, if, for example, Tesla stock shows up, we would, well, how is that okay? And probably that would end up, kind of would be the method where it'd be flagged as audit minded.
Elaine?
Actually, yeah,
do you wanna
so
comment?
just to add on all the things that Director Bloom and then Nathan also mentioned. So we have different layers for our investment, policy. First, our responsibility is actually to set up an investment policy which is compliant with the California Government Code. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have an investment advisor right now, a third party, which produces reports like on a monthly basis and can states that we are compliant, or all the trades, all the investments are compliant with our policy, which is compliant with the California Government Code. And then lastly, our auditors also look into our policy, and we also give them updates to the policy whenever they ask for it. And then most of the responsibilities, I think the bulk of it really is just to make sure that everything is in line again with the policy, plus the accounting valuations, accounting transactions, it's recorded properly, fairly, and accurately on the books. So those are basically the three things when it comes to our investments. For the scope, I think Nathan already mentioned the scope of the work when it comes to the audit. So I'm not really gonna tackle that any further, but just to clarify, we have different layers of control for us to be able to just make sure that we are actually compliant, like 100% compliant with the laws, especially particularly the California Government Code for investments.
Thank you.
I just have a last question.
Sure.
I'm familiar with how it's done in the private sector, but I realize the public sector is different. And this isn't for our agency today, but as we look at taxes and some of the, particularly what's happening in some school districts and so forth, I'm curious about if there's some sort of comparable finding regarding going concern about a public agency, looking at revenues down the road and comparing them to their budget now. Is there any kind of alerting that you would do if there were a problem?
Oh. Yeah, so you folks are far from a going concern issue. But it's a valid point. The governments don't go bankrupt. People think about going concern disclosures from the audit reports about bankruptcy. It is somewhat relevant for some of these school districts because some of them are facing declining enrollment and they have to make budget decisions. And so kind of the going concern that we would look at would be if it's a fire district. If we were concerned that there's some, over the next 12 months, significant unplanned reductions of service, if you're going, lay off half the firefighters and closing stations, we're concerned that there would be a takeover, like if the state was gonna come in and take over operations because deterioration of the financial position. Those are kind of the things that we would look at, and there are going concern issues for local governments. Not the case here, but it is out there.
So you would issue a statement if that were a risk or a concern?
Oh, yeah, so the audit standards do require that we have to, we required to kind of look a year past the date of the report. So, report was issued in December. If we think within the next 12 months, there's a concern about, I'll say insolvency, but probably not fully the right term, but if there was some concern about that, there would be a going concern modification within the audit report. And then there'd be some notes that are also required within the report as well.
Okay, thank you. It was just my ignorance. I was curious.
Is there a disclosure if we're gonna take over the finances of the state?
Yeah.
Don't answer that.
Every year or so, it's a little unusual, but every year or so, we do have to go through the process of public finance, and there have been disclosures necessary. Not here,
I move that we accept the annual comprehensive financial report related supplemental reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Director Bloom, seconded by Director
You got a
Jones.
conflict? You got a conflict? Yes.
No,
Oh,
no,
no.
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 Any public comment, no public comment, if you're attending via Zoom and you have public comment, please use the raise features. Public comment.
And so roll call, Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
And Director Pollak?
Aye. So that motion carries. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, moving on to item 5.
It's always better the second time.
To adopt a resolution awarding a contract to Cummings Management Group for Fire Station 1 construction management service in the amount of $1,795,609. So Chief,
I'm gonna kick it off, and then Francine working with John Hitchcock, so he can share some information with you. Yeah, I will kick it off by saying, we took this to Finance Committee, and it was moved forward, the board recommended we approve this. This one's interesting in that, we only had one bid. And I'll let John talk about that and share with you, some of the things he did behind the scenes to make this recommendation, so.
John, you're on. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay,
We can hear you.
perfect.
You're on, John.
All right.
Thank you.
So just like our other fire station projects, for the Fire Station 1 project, we're looking on bringing on a construction management firm to assist us with the review of the construction documents as well as overseeing the construction of the project. As you recall, back in December, the board approved a directive with PBK Architects to start the construction documents for the Fire Station 1 project. So as they continue to develop those documents, we will be looking at a construction management firm to assist us at looking at those documents to make sure that what's being designed is also constructible. So starting in May, that's when we're going to be looking at having the construction management firm starting to assist us with that process. So what we did is we went out to bid back in January. We solicited over 10 construction management firms, and surprisingly, we did only receive one bid. We reviewed that bid. We determined that Cummings Group was qualified. We contacted all of their references. All of their references gave them high remarks. They most recently did several projects with the city of Palo Alto, including their 2 fire stations. They've also worked with our architect firm, PBK Architects, in the past. After that, we went ahead and we did interview them to make sure that the personnel that they were proposing was a good fit for the fire district. And based off all of that, we determined that Cummings Group was qualified and could provide the services that we were requesting. The next thing that we did was we reached out to the other firms that did not submit proposals, because only receiving one proposal was a bit odd, and we wanted to find out exactly what was going on. So I heard back from several of the firms, and the responses mainly were they didn't have the personnel that we were requesting for the duration that we were looking at. Other concerns were the RFP was requesting, or not requesting, but it had a preference for experience working in the county of San Mateo, specifically in the city of Menlo Park. Also, past experience with fire station projects. So several of the firms thought that, because we had a preference toward that they decided to not submit a proposal. One other issue was our prior construction management firm that we worked with in the past. They're actually going out of business, so they didn't submit a proposal on this. After looking at all that and looking at the cost proposal for the project, it was surprising, and it was actually a very good surprise that the cost that they were proposing was 1.525 million. And the estimate that we put together way back when we first started this project was 1.5 million for construction management firms. So they were just $25,000 more than what we were expecting. This contract is based off of a 3-year construction duration. However, as we've seen in the past, projects tend to go late, not necessarily at the fault of the construction management firm, typically due to the contractor. So we are building in a 1-year buffer. So the total contract that we're looking at awarding is just under $1.8 million.
Okay, I'll open it up to, well, actually, is there a motion, but to start the discussion, is there a motion?
I move that we adopt a resolution awarding the contract to Cummings Management Group for Fire Station 1 construction management services in the amount of $1.795609. And I can also report that the facilities committee, although Robert can report that too, the facilities committee did review this as well.
Is there a second?
For finance, I guess.
Both.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Director Blue and seconded by Director Jones. I'll open it up for the board discussion. Rob, I don't mean to ignore you, but if you have a comment, raise your hand. Do you have a comment on this? Or I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I just want to thank John for a great report. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other, Chuck?
You answered one of my questions, but I just want, you're talking about this would start in 2 months, is that correct?
So that's correct. So in early May, we're expecting to be at approximately 40 to 50% done with the construction documents, and that will be the first review that the construction management firm will be responsible for doing.
Okay, the reason, that was a question I had before you said that, I couldn't find it in the document or in the, I couldn't find when it was supposed to start. There was some notion about getting involved early on and helping with value engineering and so forth. So my next question is really one of ignorance. Is construction management the same expertise as value engineering?
So very similar. So the construction management firm does have a piece of value engineering. So basically what will happen is they will review the drawings first for constructability. As we continue through this process, we'll continue to get more cost estimates from an outside firm. If those cost estimates start exceeding our expectations or our budget, then what we'll do is we'll look to the construction management firm to provide recommendations for value engineering to give us some options on how to get back within budget, if that's what the board wants to do.
Although, wouldn't we want to do value engineering in any case? It seems like the budget we have is based on just things pulled out of almost thin air. I mean, they weren't based on much of anything. And if we could build it for less, it seems like we ought to know that. I'm just wondering if this firm, I don't quite understand how this firm and that so-called other firm that you just mentioned, how they would interact or when they would interact and so forth.
Sure. I think there's 2 different types of value engineering. The first type of value engineering is looking at ways to do certain types of construction quicker and for less cost. The other type of value engineering is, for example, looking at a mechanical system and saying, okay, we're providing a certain type of mechanical system that provides cooling to every single room and everybody has their own controls. That's a very expensive system. So we could look at, okay, we're going to have a system that is providing cooling throughout the entire station, and there's only one set of controls or two sets of controls. So the first thing that we're going to look at is, yes, the construction management firm will look at value engineering as we go for the first example that I gave you. But for the second example is we're trying not to lessen our standards. We want to build our fire station and our other buildings to a certain standard that we have. But as those cost estimates come in, if it exceeds our budget and the board isn't satisfied with that number, then we can look at, okay, how can we reduce our costs?
I think it's worth noting a correction to your statement there, which is that there weren't detailed inputs into the budgeting process for the building. It's actually incredibly carefully architected design documents, building materials documents, the capabilities of these structures, what features the structures are going to have. Those all the way down into the landscaping plans went into the creation of that budget. So what John's talking about is really the scenario that says, if based on all that educated information and detailed inputs that we had into the process, facilities has been working on this with staff for at least 2.5 years, defining all those requirements. If for some reason the budget were to come in materially off of the number that we estimated based on all those inputs, then it would be, okay, well, something's changed in either the pricing environment or the cost of construction has escalated, which is also possible, in which case the board would then have another educated decision to make as to whether we want to increase the budget and continue with the current design, or we want to reduce the capabilities that have already been specified to fit into a lower number. But it's the idea that there weren't detailed documents or anything else is just incorrect.
Oh, that was the impression. Who did the original budget?
John will have to speak to who did it,
Yeah.
but the board has had insight into it, and the facilities committee has insight for about 2 years now. But go ahead, John.
At least 4 years.
Yeah. So when we originally started this project and presented it to the board with PBK Architects provided a conceptual level design cost estimate. That's a very basic estimate based off of current cost of construction for the type of building that we were looking at per square foot. They developed the hard cost. I developed the soft cost based off of our expectations. As we continue through that process, they did a design level cost estimate most recently, and our estimated cost went from 120 million down to 115 million. Now, again, a design level cost estimate is still just that. There's still a lot more detail that's going to be put into the plans. So we're expecting to get 2 more cost estimates before we're ready to say, hey, we're ready to go out to bid or actually go out to permitting. So the next cost estimate will be done in a few more months as we get through about 50-60% of construction documents. And then the last one will be done around 95% construction documents. So we keep having those milestones to show us whether or not, we're on target or not. If we start seeing that, our costs are increasing, whether it's, as Director Bloom said, whether it's because of construction costs or maybe there's some type of economical issue going on or political issue, it gives us that opportunity to adjust as needed.
John, as you've described it, it's sort of my understanding that it's really just a general estimate based on a cost per square foot and not down to what brand of electrical fixtures we were getting or something. So when the budget went from 120 to down to 115, isn't that because we changed the time period of construction?
So the two main things is when we did the conceptual level estimate, that was a basic estimate. You're correct. But when we did the design level cost estimate, that's a more detailed estimate. You know, they look at how many doors are you going to have, how many windows are you going to have, what's the type of building material are you using? Are you using steel? Are you using construction block, wood, steel, etc. So that most recent estimate is very detailed, but it's going to continue to get more and more detailed as the plans get more developed. So like you were saying in regards to light fixtures, the design level cost estimate might say you have 100 light fixtures, but the construction document cost estimate that we'll seeing in the future will say, yeah, you have 100 light fixtures, but 10 are this type, 20 are this type, 30 are that type. So it continues to get more and more specific as we go. I think there was one more part of your question.
I thought the change, I didn't realize, I mean, we've sort of been kept up to date, but I didn't realize there was a difference between the what do you call it, the conceptual level price and the design level price. I thought the only thing that changed was how long the period of construction would be, and you knocked off almost a year, and that's where the cost savings was.
So there was cost savings associated with the decision that we would not do it in phases, that we would move the existing staff to the property next door to the headquarters building, the current headquarters building, and that reduced the need for the phasing process, which accelerated construction contributed to it. But this is, to put it all on that would be incorrect. It's a contemporaneous process of we're making different kinds of decisions as we go along, including things like, are we going underground? Are we not going underground? Those were very early decisions that had a dramatic impact on cost as to whether we're going to have underground parking or not. So there's a continual refinement that the thing you mentioned about the time is just one aspect of refinement as we get closer to the project.
And it will change once construction starts. You know, there may be some improvements, or we have to come up with some more money because we don't know what's really going to happen once we tear it open, have that underground parking coming. But the best estimate is being made at this point in time. So.
Okay, well, my original, I mean, I changed my mind on this, but my original impression was that it might be premature to be doing this, but I think this kind of review of the plans is important, so I don't hold the same thoughts that I had before. I was curious then just about two kind of related aspects. What is the relationship, if any, or were you introduced to this firm through TDK, or what is the relationship between them and TDK, if any?
No, I was not introduced to them through PBK. PBK actually did provide a couple firms for me to reach out to, which I did. And obviously they didn't submit proposals. But Cummings Group was just one of the construction management firms that we had on our list from the Fire Station 4 project, that we were interested in them way back then. And this time around, when we solicited, they were obviously interested in us. So they went ahead and submitted. In regards to their relationship with PBK Architects, they don't have a direct relationship with our current personnel that are assigned to our project, but they have worked with PBK Architects in the past. And I talked with our architect, and he reached out to his coworkers, and they gave them good remarks.
Okay, and my last question is, in one sense, it's sort of obvious, and I'm sure the answer is yes. And that is, have you checked references? But I was also curious if they've done any construction nearby that you're able to go see, or that gives you confidence that they can do this job.
Yeah, so as I stated in the report, they recently did the Palo Alto fire stations.
I saw that, and I was a little bit surprised in a way because the Palo Alto fire stations cost substantially less than ours do. So it seems like Palo Alto has different standards or something. Are you aware of that, or is that significant in any way?
Well, I know their fire stations are definitely smaller than our fire stations. I believe they have like 1 or 2 base stations, and our stations are, this station 1's going to be 4 bays. There's certain standards as far as size needs. Having a drive-through station is a standard that we have, for example. But also when you look inside the station, the type of finishes that we have are definitely durable finishes, low maintenance. These are things that we want to continue to keep as our standard.
I would note there's probably substantial variation in the prices of the homes built in your neighborhood by orders of magnitude difference, based on square footage, based on the interior finishes, based on the construction firm that was used, based on the quality of construction. So you can't, without looking at detailed plans and detailed construction documents, you can't compare project A to project B. The question was, did John check references? The answer is yes, he checked references, and the committee had discussions about the references and the nature of their ability to do the work. The committee was satisfied with that.
I think when you start talking about how much it costs, you take this room here, you kind of figure out every aspect of what goes into the completion of this particular room in terms of foundation, the furnishing, and then you come up with some idea based on historical numbers that you have used before in other projects, come with some best guess estimate. And from that best guess estimate, you start working with the architect to kind of understand what additional things you want to have for your project. And that's where your costs start getting added to the project. And that when we go underground, like we're gonna go underground here, that will add a tremendous amount of cost to the project that may not necessarily happen in Palo Alto, or even happen in Station 6 or 4 and the rest of them.
Can I move that we vote on this?
Well, we have a motion, okay. Any public comment? Okay, Rob, do you have anything to add?
No, thanks.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solana?
Rob?
Rob?
Director Solana?
We're voting.
Aye.
Had to get off mute.
So that motion carries. We'll move on to item 6, which is to adopt a resolution awarding a contract to Golden State Fire Apparatus for the purchase of 2028 Pierce water timber in the amount not to exceed $980,000. Chief?
We'll take this whole thing, and this one actually was reviewed by finance and suggested that we could afford to the full board. The last one we had was facilities.
Thank you. It's the same 2 people, so we blur.
Yeah, but, anyway, what we're looking for here is approval to move forward with awarding the purchase of a 3,000 gallon water tanker. It was included in our current year's budget. This is a wonderful piece of apparatus for us to have for contingency purposes. Really, when you look at water supply issues, whether it's a temporary water supply issue because the water purveyors are down or something's happening in one of our neighborhoods, or heaven forbid we have a large earthquake, in which case most of our water will be damaged or destroyed. This will give us a wonderful resource for allowing they can shuttle water to fire engines, fill tanks, etc. They can, respond to limited wildland events. It's a pretty large apparatus, so it's really intended to serve our district more than it is intended to serve our neighbors, in the form of a wildland response. But it can have limited capabilities as far as being able to. It's got spray bars. It could certainly put out a grass fire if it's on flat ground. But I think it's a really smart play for us to have a water tanker in our quiver of equipment. I will share, there is one slight minor change, though it's not reflected in the staff report. It was the actual contract. From what I shared with the finance committee, what was before you today, I noticed in looking at the contract that there had been included in the overall price travel for our folks. And that was something that the board expressly asked that we not have included in those contracts, so it was removed and the price went down by about $20,000 after Pierce reviewed the travel. So that's something.
980.
Yeah, the 980 still is a not to exceed amount.
Right.
The actual contract price is $882,585. We have some wiggle room that's generally have a 10% over. And also, we are gonna pay for this, assuming the board approves it right away. Elaine, our finance whiz, did the math, and it makes sense for us to pay for it upfront rather than get a small discount. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, to start the discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adopt a resolution awarding a contract to Golden State Fire Apparatus for the purchase of one 2028 Pierce water tender in an amount not to exceed $980,000.
So moved.
Moved by Director Jones.
I'll second it.
Director Bloom seconded. I'll open it up for discussion. Directors, Chuck?
I'm sorry, I would like to defer to whoever else wants to ask questions, but I do have some.
Oh, you can go ahead, because you got your hand. Rob, do you have any questions regarding this item? You're on mute, Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Okay, here we go. All right, Chief, we don't have any of these vehicles in our fleet.
We have a small water truck, but it's not a robust water tender. So it doesn't have spray bars, it doesn't have pump, what they call pump and roll capacity, where you can actually drive it and pump at the same time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a regular responsibility for us.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Chuck?
It's referred to in here at some point, that it's a tactical water tender. Is there a difference between a water tender and a tactical water tender?
It's interesting, it is a, I'm trying to remember where it comes from. I think it's a fire scope definition. Fire scope is that board I sit on that they create guidelines for categorizing equipment. So it just means that it contains all the equipment for what they call the tactical water. So it's not like it is by all means not a general water tender that you would see at a construction site, which would be something you would put out to the equipment or grant. This has a fire pump that's capable of pumping, takes hose, like I said, has the ability to pump and roll, which means you don't have to stop it. It has two separate engines where it has a power tank that allows you to actually drive and still flow water.
And what, you mentioned wildland fires, does it have special wheels and tires and stuff for?
No, it's not intended to be an off-road vehicle. It could go on a flat dirt road. It's not designed to be off-road or on, where we would have a smaller water tank. So the intent is for us to be able to protect our district, which generally it will be able to traverse any of that property.
I'll have a question in a minute that'll go to that point you just made, but let me ask something else. You mentioned that the water tenders were used to supplement the hydrants at the Middlefield Road fire. Where did we get those?
I don't remember what agencies, but we put the call out, we were in need of water, we had maxed out what we could suck out of the system. And so we just put the call out for agencies that had water tenders to help us out. I don't remember, or I don't know who specifically has them.
Dispatch has a defined water tender group, they call it, because of the limited resources in the county. So the request would have gone from us for the water tender group. They then solicit all the departments that have water tenders to meet the capacity requested.
So, and then it's helpful that usually what happens is the water tender will go and hook up at a hydrant that's not going to interfere with us using the hydrants on site. They'll fill up and then they go out throughout the neighborhood where like people were involved in structure protection, right? And they were running out of water. They would fill up their tanks, move on to the next one, fill up the next tank, and kind of just keep doing it. So it's a pretty normal thing when you have these large conflagrations.
At one point, maybe we still do it, we, just out here, we had some sort of a pool where we could just suck up the water.
Sure, it's, yeah, you
What
can.
is that called?
A drafting
Drafting,
pit
yeah.
or a pond, or, but yes, this has the capabilities of drafting, so that the water tender, this water tender could go and put a hose in a creek or in somebody's pool if they had access to it, suck the water out of there to fill up their tank.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you remind me, please, how many apparatuses, I think it's 9, but I could be wrong, how many apparatuses are we being reimbursed for by the county via the AMR and so forth?
Oh, you're talking about FRU monies?
Yes.
Oh, that, I think it's 7?
7?
Yeah, for our paramedic services.
Out of how many?
Well, we also have the 2 trucks that have them, so it's really out of 9.
Of 9, okay.
Yeah.
At one point, this is what my concern is about this. I think we should have it, don't misunderstand me. What I didn't like is the comment at the top of the second page where it says the water tender will be available for special call assignments through county communications. I don't see why we would make this available to the county. We're not getting reimbursed for it. And for us, the taxpayers in locally here to pay $1 million to get something that might not be available when we needed it, just doesn't make sense to me.
So I would point out, we didn't reimburse any of the water tender group that responded to the North Fair Oaks fire.
I mean, it's the same kind of concept. It really has value when you have these large fires, and as you pointed out, we just shared. Other agencies sent us their $1 million water tenders on the 2700 Millfield fire. Very helpful. And it's something that's rarely used, and I think our ability to be able to share it, it's not gonna go out of county and be gone on those, wildland assignments for days, but if our neighbors in need, yeah, we would send it.
Well, I mean, at one point, when we bought the second, a ladder truck, the chief, withheld it from county dispatch because we were buying it because we had a need on the other side of the freeway and so forth. And at this point, I personally am very, leery of the county and, the AMR in terms of the reimbursements we're getting for providing this stuff. And for us to spend $1 million of our taxpayers' money for something that might not be available to us, I don't think is correct. And I mean, if somebody wants to call us and say, can we use it, and we have the right to say yes, but where the county could just dispatch it without our approval. And this could be something where there's a mass need, and whoever gets the call in first gets the item. And my understanding is these items don't leave. It's not like us sawing a tree in the middle of the street, when the tree falls down. Once one of these things is on scene, it stays on scene. We can't just take it away from that scene.
I would imagine in this case, the water tender is not gonna be staffed. So the county is gonna have to, if there's a need for it, they will have to check in with us and see if it's available.
So
it's the county public safety communications, if there's a request for water tenders.
Okay, that's not what it says. I mean, it just says it would be a special call and assignment.
But that's the special call is them reaching out, asking if we can provide it, and we have the ability to say no.
Okay.
Or it's committed, or we don't have staff, or et cetera. And then also just to the staffing, it will be, I think ultimately be here at Station 1. And it won't be staffed. What we do is we cross staff it. My experience in the past has been usually an engine and the water tender, somebody from the engine will hop on the water tender and drive it if it's an area that doesn't have water. Or if we just have an area that needs it, specifically, the entire engine crew can hop on. It can go out in a couple of different formats.
That's no different than the air support unit out of Redwood City Fire. If that crew of, I believe it's engine 9 and truck 9, if they're out on a call, there's nobody to staff their support unit. We have to go somewhere else in the county to get one. And I'd point out that's an asset we don't own. We don't have one. We don't have the ability to refill Scott Air packs. So this mutual aid system has value and it's a give and take system. And I think debating or spending board time debating whether we should have an asset involved in it or not is really an operational decision that the chief should own.
Well, I have to say, I disagree with that. We're spending $1 million of our taxpayers' money, and we're gonna give that to staff members who don't live within the district.
We're not.
Sorry.
So it raises the question, it's an interesting debate. It raises the question, do you not want those other organizations provide us equipment when we have a fire? We have, I can assure you, based on the North Fair Oaks fire, we have used far more resources on that one fire than we'll probably give in mutual aid over the next 3 to 5 years. The amount of units that responded to help us with North Fair Oaks, we don't reimburse them. That's the mutual aid system. That's how it works. I, for one, as a resident in the community, I want to be a supplier of resources to other communities, and I want to be a recipient of supplies from other communities when we need them. And the system works relatively flawlessly.
Robert? You can be Maria.
I'm done.
The key words that I assume in the way it was written, that it says that the water tender will be available for special call assignments. And I guess the determination of what determines special, I would assume it would be left up to the chief to kind of understand that this is not a joyride we're going on or communication education kind of thing, but it would be, if that's part of the special assignment. So I don't see any frequency of, some other city or fire department say, hey, let's go over to Miller Park Fire and get their water tender. It has to be, I think, for a special situation, unless that situation that they ask for is a special kind of arrangement.
Yeah, I read that similarly.
So I'm wondering, is that, I assume that that's what it really means. I didn't misunderstand what that sentence is. And if that's the case, then I think it's not an on-call kind of, any kind of call can come through, or anybody can just request it. It has to be a kind of a special situation.
I will share, we are going to use it within our district if one of our water purveyors has a block or two that doesn't have water. We'll move it over to that sector to cover that. We're not moving it outside of our jurisdiction if another city or jurisdiction has that same issue, a non-emergent kind of thing, just like we have a gap in our water. It will be a mutual aid request to us that we don't have to say yes to. And it will be, will be extenuating circumstances. It'll be in general, people will have some kind of catastrophic fire where they have water supply issues. They're few and far between. So primarily it will be in us, and we will have, it won't be an automatic anything where just PSC can grab it and go. They'll be calling us to ask if we're willing to share that resource.
Because I know in East Palo Alto, over the last 3-4 years, because of the water pipes and the mains over there, they seem like one is blowing out almost every year over there until they get the water pipes and stuff like that. So to have something like this available, if something really catastrophic happened over there, will be, I think, to our benefit.
Rob, your hand's up. Can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you for doing it. Chief, I'm sure this won't be, fully staffed vehicle. Where would it be stored? And who would have the responsibility, if it is needed, to roll it out for service?
So, yeah, the ultimate plan is it's going to reside at Station 1 when it's complete. I think it is a 27-month delivery date. So I don't know specifically. I have to ask Chief McDonald where he's planning on putting it. It might be up at Station 4 in the interim, but the ultimate long-term plan is it will be housed here. There's not going to be specific staff assigned to it. So if if the engine's here and it's needed, either the entire engine crew will hop on and go, or the engine will assign somebody to drive it, and the engine and that driver will drive it to wherever it's needed. So it's not gonna be a full-time staff piece.
Okay, and I just have one more for Virginia. How much training time would you estimate in order for how many firefighters would need to be trained, and what would be the complement when it is called out?
That's a great question, because I had, unfortunately down south in Ventura County, my one fatality was a water tender rollover. So everyone who's a driver is gonna get trained on how these things are different than a fire engine. There's the weight shifts in those things, and they can be top heavy, but there will be a comprehensive training program, and only people that are qualified will be able to drive it. So how long is it gonna take? That's a Chief Ellis question, but the nice thing is we'll get everybody trained up before it goes in space.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Chuck?
I wanted to ask about the staffing also. How many people does it take to actually move
Just
it?
one.
Just one?
Yeah.
Oh, so you wouldn't send a whole engine crew of 3 out on it?
It depends, first of all, if we just have an area that is gonna not have water in it for a couple days, we might move it to that station and assign it there. And then if there's a fire or something like that there, the firefighter will drive it and follow the engine that has the captain and the engineer to that fire, and if they need water, then they've got
I see,
water.
so 3 people could be out there with 2 apparatus?
Yes.
Okay, I that wasn't clear.
Right, I know that's not.
Okay.
Yeah, they would have 3,600 gallons of water instead of 600.
Yeah, well, but let me just say, and I know there's a lot of impatience with asking questions, but
Go for it.
it says here at the top of page 2, and this wasn't clear to me. It says the water tender will be available for special call assignments through Conduit Communications. I'm fine with a mutual aid situation. It's the auto aid that probably. And then it goes on to say, these incidents include vehicle fires or hazmat responses on the Dunbarton Bridge, 101 and 280 freeways, including electrical vehicle fires. Well, this isn't something that happens once in a blue moon. I mean, this happens more frequently. And it also says it can be used for Plan D positioning for red flag. I assume that means weather problems, fire weather events. I don't know if that means in Menlo Park, or if that means whoever feels like they might be in danger, they could get it positioned there. And further down, it mentions that it'd be at construction sites. Again, it doesn't say that it would be available in Menlo Park, or it could be up in Bailey City. And my concern is, I would like us to have some control over this, so that the priority is Menlo Park. And we can certainly, in one of those dramatic need for water situations, we can certainly make it available.
So you're talking about.
We should make it available, but that's not what that paragraph says.
And I understand what the intent is, and also, I think Captain Hendricks wrote this report, and he was trying to create a use case for it, and I didn't look at it through the lens of like you're looking at it now. We will have control, and it won't be sent willy-nilly on anything and everything. Yeah, we don't know about EV fires, they use a lot of water, so there's a potential, but we're not gonna be sending it across up to northern San Mateo County.
I think it's important to have this clarity because we've had certain jurisdictions within the fire district be concerned about, how are we gonna have enough, of the crew here if they're people are on deployment, that kind of thing, so I hope that answers your questions, Chuck. So-
Like I said, it's not going out on deployment. I made that pretty clear when we were moving down that we're not looking at farming this out to OES or CAL FIRE or whoever for their water tender needs. This is a district resource, and
So I just wanted
catastrophic
to make
events will help neighbors.
Yeah, so I just wanted to
Hero.
make sure that
Yes.
we're all sensitive to that, because this issue's come up before, way more years ago. Okay.
Can I just add one last question? would this be lit, would the compartments that are in it, those kind of things, be roughly the same? So that somebody using a Pierce engine would go to the same places for the same?
No, it's gonna have a completely, well, mostly different complement of equipment. It's not gonna, generally, they don't carry all the EMS gear. Their water tenders will have a lot more fittings. If you know what a fitting is, I mean, it's the things you use to couple up all kinds of tanks. So generally, you'll have a bunch of supply lines, a lot of fittings, some tools, but there's not a lot of compartment space on that. It's not intended to go to a call and be the answer to anything other than really providing water.
And in general, would this crew stay in the cab during this being used?
No, if there's shuttling operations, usually there's one person that's going back and forth to the hydrant. If the other engine's there, they're doing what they can to either help out on the scene or be reassigned to another crew. So it's not going to be 3 people operating the water tank.
And somebody doesn't have to be in the cab to operate the pumps or anything?
But the pumps are usually operated from outside.
Okay.
Yeah, so someone will drive it, get outside, connect up to an engine, and then push water from the water tender into the engine's tank, disconnect, and move to the next.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solana?
Aye.
And Director Crowley?
Aye, so that motion carries. And now on to our last regular agenda item, which is to accept the implementation plan, the internal control assessment recommendations. Elaine, want to kick this off?
Yes, good evening again, everyone. So this item was also taken to the finance meeting and we actually reviewed it in detail as well. So the board remembers, last December of 2025, we actually presented results of the district's internal controls assessment project, which was undertaken to formally document the risks and evaluate the sufficiency of our existing of their existing internal controls. So at that meeting, the board directed us, staff, to develop and present a plan outlining how the district would respond or address the recommendations, particularly the proposed timeline on how we're going to implement it and when. So on page 373 of the packet, so this is attachment A, which is basically our plan, implementation plan on those recommendations for that specific project. So you would see the recommendations, the risk level, the district response, which we also presented in the last in the December board meeting. So really, what's new here is the last column, which is the implementation timeline. So in terms of methodology, what we did is we tried to assess or balance the risk level of the recommendations plus the amount of work that staff needs to do in order to implement those recommendations. So as you can see in the report, we will start in the last quarter of fiscal year 25-26, which is this upcoming April, and then the rest we're doing in the next fiscal year. So each recommendation or each quarter will probably have 1 or 2 implementation for those recommendations. The only item that we don't have a specific timeline right now is item number 4, which is again it's on page 373 on 373 on the first page. So this is in relation to the standard desk procedures for specific accounting functions and tasks or finance functions and tasks. So the reason why we are kind of like postponing it or we don't really have a specific timeline for this, it's because we are currently in the process of upgrading our ERP system. So doing this particular task right now would not make sense because we are planning to actually change or revamp our full accounting system in the near future or in the next 1-2 years. So we decided that, once we're done with, that upgrade for our ERP system, then we will address, this recommendation and make those standard desk procedures available. So I think that's pretty much the gist of, this report. If there are any questions, feel free to ask.
So, kick off the discussion, is there a motion to accept the implementation plan for the internal controls assessment recommendations?
So moved.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Williams, seconded by Director Jones. I'll open it up for discussion now. Do you have any questions, Chuck?
Just a real brief, I think this is good, I like it, I would like it you to periodically, I don't mean every meeting, but once every 3 months, 6 months, once a year, I don't know, keep us up to date on your progress through all this, maybe through the chief's report, maybe some other way, but I'd like to follow along and see how it's going.
Yeah, we can definitely do that, and that's really the plan. Is I think once we have like significant like movements or progress with some or most of the items here, we'll definitely report it out. We can even do it per quarter because I think what we intend to do is actually do by quarter or 2 per quarter anyway. So we did really specifically say, we're going to do it in April or March or June. So definitely in terms of timing, we can do quarterly or what we deem is appropriate when the time comes.
Thank you.
Rob?
Thank you.
Okay, any public comment? No public comment. Then let's do a roll call for the vote.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solana?
Aye.
And Director Collins?
So that motion carries, and we go to the proposed agenda items. Number B. Any proposed agenda items?
Well,
Robert,
I'm famous.
put it out there.
And it gets back to the correspondence we got from Michelle. And it's an agenda item that I think it really needs to be, for me, I saw pieces of it, the letter, that I asked myself, well, why did it get to this point? And I don't want to discuss it in this open forum. I would love to kind of put it in a closed session so we can kind of look at it, because I don't want to see this thing repeat itself, because it's one person today and next person somebody else tomorrow. It's about understanding the process, and if there's a gap in the process, then we need to kind of uncover it and then fix it so that due process is actually taking place, that will give everyone a sense of fairness, if I may use that term. So at some point, I want to be able to kind of look at it in that format.
In a special meeting?
Special
Or a
meeting,
closed session.
closed session, so that we can kind of just understand the process. Because it looks like there's a gap in that process somewhere.
So let me ask you, Robert, I'm looking, I think the interviews are on April the 14th, right? For the candidates, the 3-person panel. Would you want to have this, I'm looking at my calendar, before the interview process or after?
Well, I think the interviewing process doesn't impact the process
Then, okay,
of what transpired.
okay, so I just wanted to make sure, that- okay.
I wouldn't say there's no urgency, but I think it needs to be dealt with. I'm just looking at the process rather sooner than later.
Well,
So it could-
okay, would you be okay if we did an open, or maybe the
We should
closed?
but give legal advice on what we can and can't do in
Oh,
open.
sorry.
No, I was just gonna suggest, if it helps, maybe one thing that we could do is we could discuss in more detail what you would like to discuss in the closed session, and we can talk about whether or not there's a closed session basis for that discussion.
I was gonna actually propose as the board president a closed session for the next meeting.
I think that's totally appropriate. What I would wanna get at is there's clearly a desire to have a closed session. The topic of which I need to understand a little bit better so that I could advise you all as to whether or not there's a closed session basis or if it's the kind of conversation that would just need to be had in an open session. So if it's possible, maybe outside of the standard process for proposed agenda items,
So
to work with
maybe
the
can I
president
just,
to figure out.
are you okay if I work with them to figure out the
They-
closed session exception?
Yeah, I just wanna have it.
Okay.
I don't care when, it can be next year, because I think it's a kind of
Okay,
robbed that hand.
okay, let me just close out this, so so we can do the flip session, so let's figure that out under, maybe it's a personnel exception around that, I don't know, so let's look at that, and since there's no hurry, there's no new agenda item proposed for this, except that I'll work with them on a potential closed session.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Rob?
I just don't wanna get dropped.
Yeah. The only question I have is to the chief and Francine, are there exit interviews done with employees that leave the agency?
Normally.
When there's time, you know.
So we're talking about new proposed agenda items. So Rob, if you don't mind, I can, if we did the closed session, we can ask these questions in the closed session.
I'm just asking for informational purposes, if there is any, that's all.
I know that we're on the item of proposed agenda items, new proposed agenda items. Do you want the chief, you wanna put a proposed item on the agenda to talk about the process for employees who leave?
We can, I think,
Cause that can be
if we
addressed
have
in
the
No.
closed session.
No,
item,
Oh, that can be wrapped up into one discussion.
I think we can figure out pretty
I'm
quickly.
just trying,
Share information in the closed session that's appropriate for it, and Nicole can suss out the things that need to come out into an open session discussion about process. But personnel issues, I think it would be helpful to be able to share with the board, just have a frank, open conversation about what transpired. Then we can figure it out from there, including Director Solano's question about exiting the use process.
yeah, I'm just trying to follow up with Robert's request, just to see if there are any done. That's all.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, do you have any?
Yeah, I had a couple. One is related to that, but it's not appropriate, I think, for a closed session, and so I'd like to discuss the reporting structure for the board clerk.
Okay. So what's the agenda item, the role of the board clerk
Not
and
the
the
role,
report?
not the role,
Well-
we know what the role is, what we know is the
Actually, we
reporting
don't know what the role is, we know what the board's role is, but that's a small percentage, so if you're asking for a new proposed agenda item, if you wanted to put the role and the reporting structure or whatever, we could put it all in there, and then we have a more comprehensive,
That's fine,
okay? So,
that's one.
okay, so should we vote, you wanna vote on that?
We don't vote on.
You don't vote on it.
Oh, sorry.
You're just adding it to the
Yeah,
list.
yeah, okay, so that's one.
The second one was, I'd like to discuss our position on this issue of mutual aid versus auto aid and so forth that I was bringing up before. And I'd like to do this in advance of whenever the county's gonna come back to us and be asking us for more money for communications and so forth. I mean, in the end, I guess I've been leaning in the last couple of years to doing our own dispatch. But I'd like to understand better that issue of aid and.
Subsidies.
Well, and the subsidy is part of that, the subsidy we get for being first responders and so forth.
Or the subsidy we potentially provide to other agencies?
That is, I don't know to what extent those relate to mutual aid and auto aid, but right now, I feel like we don't control our own destiny when we've got other agencies coming into Menlo Park, and we've got the middle of our district, and we've got our district going out to other agencies. And I think, I don't think it's true, but it'd be interesting to find out. I think, Gary made the assertion that we get lots more service from others, or we did in one case, than we're ever gonna get that we're ever going to provide. My guess, and it's just a guess, that that's not true. I'd like to discuss how much goes back and forth here. And what we want out of that. I mean, I don't wanna be, I'd like to discuss what we want as an agency. And the third thing, and it's not because I'm looking at this letter that we got from the Atherton resident about the sirens and so forth. And there's information that's requested here that we don't normally have. For example, the AMR, like, did they get sirens that are louder than they used to be? Our calls increased, and there's just interesting stuff here. And maybe the chief, I'd like that on the agenda, just so I learn better. How do we respond to something like this?
Can I suggest
Yeah.
that Chief could probably, having been involved in lots of dialogue on it, Chief can probably address that in a staff report, or in, not a staff report, Chief's report as to the responsive information relative to this
That would
question.
be an easy one. I can address it next month. And then you guys can let me know whether you would like additional information.
I think that's probably the best way to go.
My preference, I'm okay with that in general, but I'd also then like to be able to discuss it rather than just being a report. I'd like to then be able to ask questions and do other
We
things.
can, if it's a chief report, we can ask questions.
Well, I will call it out like I've done in the past underneath and put separate bullet points so that the public knows we're gonna have a discussion about this as part of the chief's report, right?
That would be fun.
Okay.
But whatever's appropriate, I don't want to then have to a month later schedule another discussion on what you just said. And I'm not suggesting that it's a problem or not a problem, I have no way of knowing, but I think we should respond to what people ask of us.
Okay, that it?
That's it for me.
Okay. Rob, anything?
I don't have any.
Okay, so then let's go to item 9, committee reports. Emergency preparedness, we didn't need facilities.
We met and we pretty much went over what was presented today in the chief report and what John talked about, so. Do you have any comments?
No. We've covered everything in the board meeting.
HR, Gary,
HR did not meet.
finance, Gary,
Finance, I believe Robert could double check me on this. I think we've covered everything that was covered in finance. Obviously, we went into much more detail. That's correct. So the Genentech question, so there, as part of the budget that's going to come up, there'll be a notation of us essentially getting a clawback on tax revenue based on a settlement that the county did with Genentech on their long running tax dispute from, I believe it went all the way back to 2000, if I remember. Mostly having to do with the unsecured property taxes, not the physical property, had to do with the way the county was calculating the cost of equipment and stuff that they were installing, and whether that included customization or basic installation or not. Ultimately, Genentech prevailed on it. The total county-wide is about $20 million. Our share of that clawback is, I believe, about 400,000. Is that correct?
Close to 500.
Close to 500,000.
470.
So that will show up in the budget report is where that will show up. In the budget process for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Does that mean it's going to come out of next year's payments to us, or?
Correct.
Two payments, right?
Correct, so without going into further details, so we're gonna include this in your budget staff report that will be in the finance committee meeting and the board meeting as well next month. Yes, so it will come out of next year's apportionment, particularly October and November.
So it does not affect this year's budget?
This won't affect this year's revenue.
Yeah, we're not writing a check to them. We're gonna get approximately $500,000 less in next year's revenue, which is how they're funding the clawback. which is essentially, it's a clawback from the agencies. It's a settlement that they signed with Genentech from a long-running dispute.
County assessor's
Yes, there's
office.
yeah.
Okay, liaison reports, Town of Atherton, Gary?
Chief and I attended it. There was nothing relevant to fire district business.
East Palo Alto, Robert?
The chief and I attended. There were some issues, but
We're in the paper.
it was in the paper, everybody I think seen that, and I don't think that had too much to do with the fire district, the internal matter that they're going through. And they're still working on design for University Avenue, try to make that a grand avenue. So we have to see what the final drawing is gonna look like, and what they're gonna put out in the streets. But I think it should be relatively safe.
Hey, Menlo Park, not a whole lot to report, but some fun stuff. The inaugural Ramadan dinner that the chief referred to was lovely and a wonderful community gathering. It just was wonderful, and this was Menlo Park and Atherton, and they hope that this will be the first of many community gatherings dinner. And
Was that associated with the mosque?
no, it was just this community group that they formed. And there, I guess there have been different dinners in different cities, like down in Los Altos, probably San Jose, and so just this organically, it was put together in 2 to 3 weeks with a bunch of wonderful volunteers who were very committed, and local restaurants actually from Menlo Park provided outstanding food. And then
Is the goal of that just community education?
No, it's not even education. I mean, it's literally just a celebration. It's just,
Got it.
just to have a meal together, which was fun. And,
Okay,
yeah,
I was
so-
just curious.
it's not even an education thing. Just to have a meal together. There were young kids who were like, oh, we're glad that we can eat now, kind of thing, right? So that was really fun. The Chipino crab feed was wonderful. I attended that, and I just want to thank Chief Wordinger and Chief Ari DeLay for all the work they put into this, and Heather and Amadi, who just the entire volunteer crew who did just an outstanding job.
And Robert, who was an outstanding waiter.
So Robert gets the feel good award, and everyone was jealous and he got to wear an apron.
And I had a cool hat
And your
too. I
hat,
had a cool
yeah.
hat to go with it.
And everyone loved the fact that you were there, Robert, and thank you so much. The CERT team was there. I mean, they really did an outstanding job.
Well, I'm glad you
You
guys
were
showed
right
up
up
too.
there.
Glad you guys showed up too.
His second career. He's also.
Right. County of Santa Fe, Rob Solano.
Oh, I was there too. Great job for staff, and Robert, crab was good, man. Good job.
Yeah, no, I didn't. You have to get a crab crew the hand. I just have to put the bread together, that's all.
I had the chicken cacciatore, so I wouldn't break out from the crab, which I'm allergic to, and it was delicious.
And Supervisor Mueller had
you're losing
Rob,
you,
we're
Rob.
losing you. Rob, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
You want me to continue?
Yeah, you were kind of cutting out a little bit. We couldn't hear you.
Okay, well, as I was saying on March 5th, the Supervisor Mueller had a roundtable meeting with the sheriff and the 2 police chiefs, one of Atherton, one in Menlo Park, and the assistant sheriff, Mark Myers, to talk about their community interests and introduce the sheriff to the group. On the 9th, I had breakfast with Councilmember Widmer from Atherton. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. The EMS JPA, Rob?
Nothing.
Yes, y'all did meet, right?
They did not meet till in May.
Okay. Okay, San Francisco Creek JPA, I just got a thank you phone call from Margaret Bruce for allowing her to present. She appreciated the opportunity and was very appreciative of the discussion and the fact that we had council members from very, the really important jurisdiction stakeholders. Director's report, I think we've all gave some of that, but if there are any, Rob?
Well, I attended a meeting over in East Palo Alto, probably part of East Palo Alto, the city.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. I attended a meeting that was held at the city of East Palo Alto regarding the Palo Alto airport. And their Stanford group of, I don't know what department at Stanford, they did some research on the airport, the little municipal airport that's there. And some interesting findings that they, what they was looking, interesting findings that took place. They did a lead study, or they did some testing of lead in Palo Alto and other areas, but they didn't test for lead in East Palo Alto. And I asked them why. They said, "Oh, we didn't have enough time to do that." So that's one of the further reports need to be done. And in the other areas, they found some pretty significant levels of lead around it in Palo Alto in the area. The group focused on, the Stanford students focused on environmental justice activity, public health, lead and noise exposure, public good and private amenities for the airport. And I asked him, well, did you look into safety at all? And they said, no, that wasn't one of the areas they was at that time charged to do. So they indicated that they put it on their list, and hopefully they begin to look into that area. Because right now they have a plan for safety, but they don't, and it doesn't really entail anything else other than just anything that's happening at the airport. If something at the airport, then they got a plan of action there. But in anything else in terms of plane coming out of the sky or something like that, they don't have a plan for that.
Was there a sponsor of this meeting?
Yes, it was with the city of Palo Alto, the airport itself, and the city of East Palo Alto. And it's been going on for a couple of years. And the last thing that was quite interesting, that because they had the I guess the chairman or the executive director of the airport that was there made a small presentation, and we got into small group discussion around the report itself. I have a copy of it if anybody interested in it. And they scheduled the meeting again to kind of go a little bit further into some of the concerns that were being raised at the meeting about the airport and the expansion of the airport. Because the main thing is they want to expand the airport to have a runway like they have in San Carlos that long. And also the biggest concern was getting rid of the leaded gasoline airplanes and moving to an unleaded. So that was one of the biggest arguments. So I just want to throw that out. Rob,
I have
you should be
nothing to
proud.
report. I have nothing to report, Virginia.
Okay, Rob, do you have anything to report from your director's reports?
No, I don't, other than what I've reported before.
Okay, I don't know.
Thank you.
Chuck, Director.
Yeah, I just was gonna say something real fast, and I just, some things that are troubling me about public agencies in general. There have been a number of stories in the press, I mean, we've known about them, but the amounts of money going out, Valley Waters, fired executive director, getting paid $780,000, I think, to quit. The sheriff saying headlines in the paper at roughly $500,000 between salary and benefits and pension and so forth. There was another one also, and then with some city, somewhere near here, Mountain View or somewhere, where the city manager quit and reported, evil doings or something like that, but then also Woodside, and then also wanted $400,000 as a result of that. And boy, people are talking, I mean, I get in these conversations and I just think that there's a lot of scrutiny right now on public agencies. And I'm disgusted with some of the behaviors here. It's nothing that I'm not comparing us to this right now, but it just makes me mindful that I want to do everything we can. That's one of the reasons I asked the auditor some of the questions. Because these things that happened in Downey, for example, and some other cities, where people just lie. And there's no, the auditor can ask anything and somebody can lie, and you don't go to jail for lying. And what's his name? The community college person who was taking bribes and so forth, is gonna, what is his pension is $500,000 also. And somehow you say, how does this happen where there are people here struggling to make ends meet? These people who are wrongdoers are taking home lots of money, and I am just committed, and I know this, I sense a lot of frustration on other members of the board, but I'm trying to make sure that everything we do is clean, and that I ask at least a question about it, so nobody can ever say, well, why didn't you ask them what's going on or something? So in any case, it's just part of a bandwagon that I'm on right now, and I just wanted to explain that publicly.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, nothing else except the correspondence which Francine referred to earlier that was sent to the chief and me and Gary, and that's the sirens on Alameda Boulevard from the Atherton resident. And if there's no further discussion or anything, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
You don't need a motion, you just adjourn.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
This siren issue,
Thanks, Ron.
this house, it's on
Good night.
Orchard, if you look at the address, but it's a street that loops around, so they're